But the way Brown has framed it is that because there aren't enough Republicans to filibuster things, everything's happening in backroom deals.
Right.
He uses the phrase backroom deal.
That's a very smart frame.
It is a smart frame. And again, like every campaign that's winning is brilliant, but this one especially, to go into a campaign in Massachusetts as a Republican who's not actually that moderate is something. And I talked to these voters who, some of them are kind of soft. I always ask, if you're a Republican, if you just started supporting him recently, and I've talked to people who are unaffiliated, they like Ted Kennedy, but they're really angry that the health care bill is being debated in these back rooms and they had to give a deal to somebody to pass it. And I talk to them and say, you realize that if this happens, they'll probably try to cram through something anyway, even worse. I mean, and it's, at this point, we're just, boxing shadows because nothing's going to change about this. Recently, I did see Joe Biden say something in Florida about how the supermajority
yeah, but they're not going to touch it. You can't touch that when you're losing your supermajority. You can do it when the other party's in power, when you got a supermajority, but it sort of can't be a response to losing an election. I'll just say one thing on the backroom deals, because I found this to be a really fascinating thing to watch. I think it's very smart framing for the Brown campaign. But of course, you think of the Gang of Six, right, which was your real sort of Republican bipartisan process there, which was, of course, a backroom deal. I mean, everything has always been backroom deals. There's been sort of a funny thing in the media where I always feel that the job of the Washington media, in theory, is to study Washington and then sort of come to you and say, here's how it really is. But in fact, what they do is they figure out what the country thinks and then put themselves in the country's shoes and then try to interpret it as the country already would, which you're seeing with these backroom deals. There's this real sort of, I'm shocked to find that politics is happening in this Congress attitude on the part of a lot of these people, as if the Nelson's deal is somehow strange, as if, we didn't, I mean, you probably remember, but a lot of people don't know what was done to pass Medicare Part B, where there were multiple ethics complaints, where somebody tried to where DeLay tried to bribe people. But even just going back and back and back, I mean, Medicare Part B is Medicare itself is entirely a deal between Wilbur Mills and Johnson. I mean, you just go to anything, and there's just always been people horse trading to get things. And the Nebraska horse trade wasn't even a very big horse trade. I mean, one thing you're seeing is that I think that, I do wonder how much a system can function under the sort of national and polarized media that delivers ideological types of transparency. Because the way they've always made things work out is these sort of deals, he's using pork to grease the way for things. And it's going to be really, really difficult on them if the new thing is that you can't negotiate for anything.
Well, I would say that Brown is on some solid footing here because if he doesn't, someone else in the crowd will hearken to Obama's campaign promise that the health care debate was going to happen in front of C-SPAN cameras. And there are smart Republicans who point this out and point out the videos of Obama doing this. Obama said that. I'm not sure why he said that. He can't have meant it because... Like that. Well, because
I wish he didn't say.
I don't know what you mean by partisan transparency, but I have noticed, really since early 2009, I talked to people like Grover Norquist who are pretty naked about the idea that if there's total transparency and everyone reads what's in every bill, there's going to be something they can get angry about, and there'll be another thing they can get angry about, and they can kind of unspool this by pointing out that every bill is actually a casserole of handouts to awful people.
Right.
It's hard to understand because it's not like we have representative democracy in order for senators not to represent the interests of their states. Right. And there's not a lot of nudging Republicans on this, but because they've gotten really bought into that idea in the last year, really. That it's kind of Ron Paul Jim Dominism, that the job of the congressman is to repeal legislation and to repeal regulation and to do absolutely nothing. Everything that comes back to their state is a result of corruption. And again, it hasn't gotten to that level in this race. We got to the first part of that argument, which is that everything should be transparent. Obama lied. Things that happen in back room deals are of necessity bad things. Again, Coakley, I do think you have to blame the Democrats in Congress and the president for making this fightable. I think she could have made all these mistakes and won narrowly if she loses, she would have, I'd give her a couple points. If this was still a situation, and if the election was in June 2009 or something.
I think that's exactly right. I think two things on this. One thing I've been thinking a lot about is the regularity with which this happens. So, we remember Reagan and Clinton as really fantastic communicators, people who really had a sense of the country's politics. But of course, Reagan lost 27 seats in his first midterm election, and Clinton lost 54. And Bush would have lost a bunch except for 9/11. He was trending downward in the polls as well.
And redistricting, actually.
Redistricting was a big deal there, as well. So I went and looked at it, and a lot of people know these stats, but exactly 2 presidents since the Civil War have ever gained seats in the election directly after their inauguration. And so at some point you have to say that there's something systemic happening here, where we bring these guys in and we think they're going to do a good job and we're excited about their agenda, we voted for their platform, but when we watch that hit the realities of our system, we begin to hate them, hate their agenda, try to bring some other people in, and then we bring those other people in, and as often as not, certainly in the cases of Clinton and Reagan, then we re-elect the guys we didn't like a couple months ago, because it turns out those other people are no better.